Today I'm going to talk about Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne. This is an interesting album because it was the first album after the death of Randy Rhoads and the first with Jake E. Lee. A lot was going on behind the scenes. This album also saw a shift in musical style. We'll be talking about all that in this video. The album was released in November of 1983 and was the first album to feature guitarist Jake E. Lee and drummer Tommy Aldridge. Was a commercial success, reaching number 19 on the Billboard 200 chart and selling over 300 million copies in the US. It also spawned two singles, Bark at the Moon and So Tired, and we're also celebrating its 40th anniversary. So the album marks a change in Osbourne's musical style, incorporating more synthesizers and pop metal elements. The album was produced by Osbourne, Bob Daisley, and Max Norman. This features a keyboardist, Airey, as a guest musician. The album also has a dark and occult theme, inspired by horror movies and literature, as you can see in the album cover here. There was some controversy over the songwriting credits. Jake E. Lee and Bob Daisley claimed that they co-wrote most of the music and lyrics, but they were not properly credited or paid by Sharon Osbourne, who was Ozzy's wife and manager. Osbourne himself admitted in the liner notes of The Osbourne Cometh that Jake E. Lee co-wrote the title track of the album with him. However, the official credits still list Osbourne as the sole songwriter for the entire album, but there will be more on that later. Let's talk about the lineup for this album. We have Jake E. Lee. He has played with several bands and artists, most notably Ozzy Osbourne and Badlands. He recorded two albums with Ozzy, Bark at the Moon and The Ultimate Sin. In 2013, he formed a new band called Red Dragon Cartel. Bob Daisley is on bass. He's worked with many famous rock and metal artists. Some of them include Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, Rainbow, Gary Moore, and Uriah Heep. Tommy Aldridge, he played drums and he's played with many bands and artists in heavy metal and hard rock genres such as Black Oak, Arkansas, and the Pat Travers Band. And we also have the guest musician, Airey. He played some keyboards. He's worked with many famous rock and metal artists. Now let's talk about the controversy over the songwriting credits. Jake Lee and Bob Daisley claimed they co-wrote most of the music and lyrics, but they were not properly credited or paid by Sharon. Lee says he was presented with a contract that stated he would have no claim to any writing or publishing rights related to the album, and he was actually threatened with being fired and replaced by another guitarist if he did not sign it. Bob Daisley was also affected by this. He co-wrote most of the music with Lee, but he accepted a buyout from Osbourne in exchange for a writing credit. Ozzy himself admitted this in the liner notes of The Osbourne Cometh. He admitted that Lee co-wrote the title track of the album with him. However, the official credits still list Ozzy as the sole songwriter for the entire album, and this has caused controversy and resentment among fans and musicians. Many of them feel Lee and Daisley deserve more recognition and compensation for their efforts. Now let's go through the songs. There were two track lists for the US and UK releases. I'll just cover all of them as they were differed by a few songs. So we got the title track, Bark at the Moon. That's a very iconic song. It showed off his heavy metal style. This was a song where we get introduced to Jake E. Lee. His playing was different from Randy Rhoads. He could still do it very well, but this had more of a commercial sound. You're No Different is a haunting ballad. It has a sound a little similar to Diary of a Madman, but it had a more of a radio rock type of sound. I've always liked this song. I think this is where Ozzy starts to move towards a commercial sound, but it still has some of those dark tones he was known for, especially on the previous two albums. Now You See It, Now You Don't. It's a decent track. It's a classic heavy metal song. The keyboards sound good in the song, and the guitar solo is awesome. Rock and Roll Rebel sounds very glam metal to me, maybe similar to bands like Dokken and Rat at that time. It's not too bad. The guitar playing is pretty good and has some pretty good vocals on that as well. Center of Eternity is a great song, one of my favorites. It opens with those bells and chants and has those Mr. Crowley style organs that open the song. Definitely one of my favorites of the album, one of my top 10 songs by Ozzy. And maybe it's some of the heaviest parts of the album as well. You know, It has a really great guitar playing, and the chorus is very catchy as well. Then there's So Tired, probably my least favorite song. It was a single. It's like an 80s soft rock song. It was made for the radio. Here's other ballads that are very good. I read one comment on YouTube. It said Electric Light Ozzy. I thought that was pretty funny. The song is okay. It's just not one of my favorites. Slow Down is a pretty cool song. This sounds more like 70s rock, maybe similar to Deep Purple, or maybe it was the Keyboards that made me think of that band. But it's a pretty good song. The song is more radio friendly than some of the others. Waiting for Darkness, another cool track. This has lots of keyboards and orchestration. I've always liked this song. It has a catchy chorus. The guitar playing is very good. It has a cool melodic breakdown with some great guitar playing and orchestration. Spiders is one of my favorite. That song is not on all the pressings. It was only on the UK version. I think it's one of the best songs on the album. It's very creepy and haunting. I like the use of the clean guitars. It has an echo sound and it kind of adds to the atmosphere of the song. The guitar riffs are ahead of the time. They kind of sound like Alice in Chains, that type of guitar riff. The last song is called Up the Bside. It's a decent song. It sounds like 70s rock. I didn't really have much of an opinion on it. It's kind of catchy. Has some cool keyboard sounds. The solos are melodic, but for me it's kind of like a filler or a B-side, which is what the title says. But now my final thoughts. It's a decent album. It has some of my favorite songs, like Spiders and Center of Eternity. It has lots of songs I don't like that much, like So Tired and Rock and Roll Rebel. I'd probably rank it higher than many albums that came out like after the 90s, but not as good as the first two albums and maybe some of the Zakk Wylde albums. Check out my ranking of all the Ozzy Osbourne albums. If you want to see where I ranked it, I think I did it right after Ordinary Man came out, or the other one. Please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.